Hi, Daily Dosers. My name is Kip Strawbridge, and I'm one of the campus pastors here at North Coast at our Carlsbad campus. And as we start this new series in the book of Joshua, we're going to be in Joshua chapter 1 today, taking a look at this idea of taking new ground. And I remember when my family and I were going to set across the country with all of our worldly possessions. And as the dad, the leader of the tribe, I do my job of going around saying, pack this up, throw this away, get your stuff ready. And then the day comes and it all loads into the truck. And then eventually there's this day where we get in the vehicles and we turn on the key and we begin driving to make this journey to a new land, if you will. And that's really where we pick up Joshua chapter 1 is these people of Israel have been wandering. You got to get a little Old Testament. We just went through Exodus in this Old Testament history. A short version of what we've walked through is that God delivers the people out of Egypt, and then they, cross the Red Sea to get away from Pharaoh. They go to the camp at the foot of Mount Sinai, and God gives them the Ten Commandments. He then lines out the establishment of the tabernacle and the priests, and then they set out to go to the Promised Land. And in this process, something happens. While they're in this wilderness journey from Egypt to the Promised Land, two big events happen that really set the stage for where we are in chapter 1. Let me read Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 and 2 to see kind of where we are. It says this: After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the people of Israel. And so that begins this chapter where Joshua is now the one to lead. So the two big things that happen is that as they were journeying, one, they were going to take this land, and God commanded them to send some spies, and they send these 12 spies, and the 12 come back after 40 days, and they get a bad report, and they go, we can't do this. I know God's sending us there, but it ain't going to happen. But two guys stand out of these 12, leaders of their tribes, and two of them are Caleb and Joshua. And they both stand up and go, no, if God's with us, we can do this. And God was frustrated. He tells Moses, like, what's up with these people? I'm so frustrated with them. And then he kind of commands, he goes, you know what? Your rebellious heart, you've been in Egypt so long, you don't trust me. I just delivered you in so many ways. We've crossed the Red Sea, plagues on Pharaoh. Like, there's nothing that they should be doubting God for. And yet they're like, yeah, he can do all that, but he can't scare out some guys that we're afraid of and deliver this land to us. And so as a result of it, he goes, you rebellious people, none of you from 20 years and older are going to go into this land. Only your children will see it. And then he goes, except Caleb and Joshua. And then the other 10 spies actually die by plague, and the two of them are saved. And now we fast forward through that process. They grumble again, and then Moses strikes a rock, and then Moses, and out of his anger, also gets told, and you too won't go into the Promised Land. And so that's what we see here has just happened. Moses, the leader of the Israelites from Egypt to the edge of the Jordan River, that Moses now looks over across the river, but has been told, you're not going to get to go. That this journey over the river into the Promised Land is not for you. There's a whole new generation now that's been raised up. And what God says to them is this in Deuteronomy. As they're on the edge, Moses then gives the law a second time. So they got the law at Mount Sinai. They've now made it to the river after 40 years of wandering because they disobeyed. God wandered them in the desert for 40 years. He then gives them the law a second time. Before you go into this land, don't forget, these are God's rules. This is what God requires of you. This is who God is. And he gives them this, and it says this in Deuteronomy 31. He says, Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the sight of all of Israel, Be strong and courageous, for you shall go with this people into the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers to give them, and you shall put them in possession of it. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. And we see over and over and over again, if you read this chapter, you'll see, be strong and courageous, be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid. God is before you, and the promise is this. And as we stand on this side of the Jordan, looking over into the promised land of heaven as believers, we have the exact same promise, and it's this: God's presence and God's protection, and that he will fulfill his promises. And the same God who's been fulfilling promises since the beginning of Exodus, and even before that, is the same God who's going to fulfill his promise of taking us over the Jordan into the promised land of heaven one day. And until then, we need to remember his presence and remember his protection. Have a good day, Daily Dosers.